What's up, nerds? Welcome back. Let's get ready to go ahead and go back into Hell in Hellcop number 2. So if you will remember from the first issue, or from the end of the first issue, basically our protagonist has been framed for the murder of his partner, and now that they've, come and accosted him, basically, like, even his, I believe it was like his captain or whatever, he was the one who kind of like accosted him and told him like, yeah, you're under arrest for the murder and shit like that. So now we see where he's in this like jail cell, and he's just kind of talking about like when they first, or when humans first made like a permanent soft spot back in, like, I think it was during like World War II or something like that. Anyway, he's talking about all of that, and then we see where he's kind of talking to one of the other demons who's telling him like, hey, weren't you one of the Hellcops that like took me in and shit? He's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. And he's like, but you know what they say, do the crime, do the time. So he's like, okay, and what crime did you do to end up in here too? So he says, they say I murdered my partner. And the guy's saying like, well, ain't that a thing? Did you do it? I mean, she seemed like a real pain in the horn, so I wouldn't blame you. And he's like, no, I didn't do it. And then of course the demon's like, yeah, that's what they all say. So we go back over to Taj, who's basically like the computer whiz, I guess, whatever. Anyway, she's over here like accosting the captain. I think he is a captain. I can't remember his title. Anyway, she's telling him like, there's no way you can believe that Virgil actually did this, and he's just telling her like, look, we have evidence, we know it was him, that's why he's in jail right now, we caught him red-handed. So he tells him like, text between them, it seems Virgil wasn't as clean as you might think, and Carol was going to blow the whistle on him. She's like, no, that's bullshit. So he says he will have a fair hearing at the tribunal. So she decides to go and like talk to him, and we see where he goes before the tribunal and basically gets his ass handed to him. They tell him like, yeah, you're going to be put away for this for a very long time, because they're basically just wanting him to confess. And he's like, confess what? Karen asked me to come over, said she had some information for me that she wasn't comfortable sharing on the phone. When I got there, she was already dead. I don't know what happened. We've gone over and over this. So they're like, yeah, I'm afraid that we do. We know what happened. Take the prisoner away while we examine the evidence and deliberate. So that's where we see later on, Taj comes and visits him and is telling him like, what happened. He tells her basically the same thing I just said. They decided I'm guilty. I'm going to be locked away in some sort of like black ops or like black site, whatever. Paramilitary. God damn, words are hard today. He says above my security level, they said, but they hold all the cards with the core being a covert paramilitary organization. No retrial, no appeal, done. I'll be stuck in some remote black ops prison for the rest of my life. Aren't you going to ask me if I didn't? She's like, no, because I know you didn't. So she says, let me think. He's like, it's all lies. Someone is out to get me, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Maybe something to do with the scarab, but I'm never going to get to the bottom of it from this cell. So she's like, yeah, that would be rough, especially since if you didn't have little old me in your corner. So he's like, what are you talking about? And then she like opens the cell, and he's like, oh. So she helps him get out and get like some of his gear, and he's getting ready to go back in to look for Karen, who's basically in hell, because I guess everybody that dies goes to hell. I don't really know. Anyway, so he's getting ready to go. She's gonna open up like the portal for him, and he's over here telling her like, oh yeah, and don't forget, like, not only that I knocked you out and forced you to do this, but I forced you to do it at gunpoint, so that way like there's no culpability on you. So she's like, yeah, I know. But in reality that I actually kick your ass, right? He's like, yeah, of course. So she says, I'm putting you by one of our caches. As close as the train as I can. This one should be your best bet. But your chances of finding Karen on it are slim to none. So he's like, well, a chance is a chance. And if I stay here, I don't really have one. So she says, I'll set the portal up for some much needed maintenance. Should give you some time before they're after you. So he's like, all right, thanks. And then he pops into this place. And we see where he immediately goes over and goes to the little cache, or cachet, however you want to pronounce it. Anyway, he goes over to that, and he's saying like, well, that is sort of what I'm attempting. All human life force passes through plane 1301A. Some recorporate here and live lives. Some move on to a reality we haven't been able to map yet. But there is a lot of quantum physics to it, especially quantum entanglement. Since Karen and I have a history, I am far more likely to find her here than some stranger. At least that's what the bigwigs at HQ have told us. So we say that, yeah, we also have like all these little like just places where we store extra equipment. So that way we don't have to worry about expending energy to get back and forth to get more equipment. He makes this little joke about how if you think Bitcoin uses a lot of energy and like resources and shit like that, if it's bad for the environment, you should see how much it's like used up whenever we use like open a portal. So he takes the little omnicycle and is like, I have a train to catch. But before he takes off, there's this little, what does he call it? A fluff ball. I don't know why he calls it, why they call them fluff balls. They just kind of look like bubbles to me. But anyway, he says that the Hellcops call them fluff balls, and they don't really know exactly what they are, that they're harmless, but can be annoying. Like this one, he's like, would you get away from me? And then before it kind of like floats away, it comes and like touches his cheek. He's like, did you just kiss me? And he's like, all right, weird. So he's saying some Hellcops think they're good luck. We really don't know exactly what they are, but no harm done. And I have a train to catch. So he takes off. We get this whole like full page spread or full page splash of him like on the omnicycle. Looks pretty cool. And we see where he's also being followed. So that's where we leave from there back to where he's kind of like he's found the train. And he's kind of describing here that he interprets it as a train. That's how we would all interpret it, because basically if we were to see what it actually is, like our monkey brains wouldn't be able to understand it and all that shit. So he's like, yeah, we just kind of like interpret it as a train. So he catches up to it, and he manages to get on board. And he starts looking for Karen. He's like, I know she has to be on here somewhere, most likely. And he's saying like, yeah, all these people, they don't really know what's going on. They're not really aware of what's going on or where they are right now. All they know is maybe it's just their minds trying to cope. This is the last car and no sign of Karen. Wish I had a plan B, because he hasn't found her. But then he looks over and he sees this guy. He's like, oh, Senator Reynolds? So at first the guy's just like, huh? Like he has to like snap him out of it. And then he's saying like, Senator, and he asks him like, where is he? He asks him, what happened to you? He's like, happened? I was attacked. Did you catch them? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. To which the senator is like, you're Hiltz, a Hellcop that I met at Hellcop Central, right? He's like, well, yeah. So he asks him like, why am I on this train? This doesn't look like the Limited. So he says, I'm afraid you're dead, sir. And he's like, what do you mean I'm dead? Like, that doesn't make any sense and all that shit. So he says, we need to get off of the train so we have more time to talk. He says, why do we need to get off the train for that? He says, because it doesn't like me. And we see where this like Reaper shows up. So he takes them outside, and he's like, but I have like a quorum to attend. He's like, it's definitely not safe, and you're dead, so you're not missing any fucking meetings. So they get out on top of the train and shit, and then the Reaper just follows them outside. So he's like, oh shit, run. So they kind of take off at a little bit of a sprint, but then the dude kind of, I guess, stops, and he says, I'm beginning to remember I was murdered. Oh my god, I'm dead. He's like, yeah, right. And I'm sorry for this. So he throws them off the train and shit. But he says it's okay, because basically here, the gravity isn't as extreme as we know it in our reality. And then he starts talking about like the Reapers really don't like it whenever you interfere with their job. So he's saying like, I wouldn't stand a chance fighting against it, but I can move it with this transport wand. Technically, Hellcops aren't supposed to use magic, but you pick up a thing or two in Hell, and it's all about what gets the job done. So he does manage to like transport it away, and he's like, all right, good, it's gone for now, but it will be back, and it'll probably be really pissed off. He says, but I won't be on its train anymore to worry about it. So he jumps off too, and that's where we go back over to, I guess, Earth, where Taj has been accosted by all these others, including like the captain, who's saying like, what do you mean we can't go right now? And she's saying like, well, I'm sorry, it's in maintenance, so the whole thing's locked up. I can't do anything. He's like, okay, fine, we'll get it back up and running just as soon as you possibly can. She's like, will do. You know, Virgil told me the analyzing computer had a glitch. Do you think the two could be related? And he's like, no, I don't. So that's where we go back over to Hell. And he says, you know the stages of grief? Well, I'm watching them all happen simultaneously and in real time with the senator, who is kind of like going through his whole thing where he's just kind of like depressed. He's freaking out. And then finally he gets to a point where he's kind of in acceptance, because he's freaking out about like all of these different things like from his world and shit. So he's telling him like, I have some questions to ask. He's like, fine, what do I care? I'm dead. So he says, tell me everything you can remember about how and when you died. So he tells him, it was the night before hearings about the Veritiv group. We were going to get to the bottom of some irregularities. I was home. That's when I heard glass breaking. My power was cut. I was shot. Too dark to see by whom. So he's like, I saw you at that hearing. He's like, but I never made it to the hearing. So he says, I saw you recommend extending their contract. He's like, you must be mistaken. It wasn't me. I'm a politician. You can take my word for it. Trust me. So he's telling him, like, you have to get me out of here. Like, we need to get myself back to Earth and everything. He's like, no, that's not going to happen. It wouldn't work. And he's like, what do you mean it wouldn't? So he's telling him, like, you're dead. Like, if your soul goes back to Earth, you're just going to slingshot right back here because you no longer have a body. So he all of a sudden sees this giant thing. He's like, "What the hell is that?" He's like, "Oh, that's just one of the natives around here, one of the locals." He's like, "You do realize you're in hell, right?" So he's just like, "What?" He's like, "I don't think I can take this." And then all of a sudden he hears this loud sound. He's like, "Oh my god, what is that terrible sound?" And he tells him the what I'd say the 515 from New Babel to Old Babel. So he's just telling him like, "I very much don't like it here." And he's like, how can you work here?" And Virgil tells him like, "You get used to it." So that's when they find where some other people come and well, demons really come and find them, and they're like, "Welcome. Are you lost? The Burning Sands is no place for the uninitiated. You're a Hellcop, aren't you?" And he's like, "Yeah, you've got a good eye." So they tell him like, "We're trackers. Knowledge is our trade." To which Virgil says, "Well, that's handy. By any chance, you wouldn't happen to know the location of the closest soft spot?" So he's like, "Soft spot, eh? This is your lucky day." He's like, "If you've got the hell coin to pay for it, we can take you right to it, because there's one not very far away from here." So he says, "Follow us," and that's where we kind of leave off for right now. We're going to see what happens. I don't really trust this new little band of demons, which I think is probably the best way to go about it whenever it is demons. So I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening from that, if he's going to actually lead them to where they want to go, or if they're going to lead them into some sort of trap or something. I get the feeling it'll probably be the latter, but who knows? Maybe I could be wrong. We'll have to find out and see what happens. But overall, still getting more interesting. I want to see where this mystery is going to go, because it does seem pretty intriguing that, the Hellcops, the higher ups for the Hellcops seem to be in on some sort of plot, but we don't know exactly just what yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, what's going to happen with this whole senator situation. I don't really trust him either, because you should never trust a politician. So I guess we'll have to wait and find out what ends up happening. But at the very least, I am enjoying the ride, and, some of the more kooky things, I guess you can call them, that go on. I've always enjoyed stuff that deal with like magic and stuff like that, but this also has, a technological aspect to it as well. So it's a very interesting blend, a nice mix. So I'm enjoying it so far. I don't know if anybody out there is also keeping up with this. If so, do feel free to share your thoughts with me down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video, make sure you're subscribed, share it out if you would like, because I do appreciate that always. But if you also want to keep up, make sure that you know when I have new videos or new content coming out. Make sure you hit the notification bell. And if you're done here, then go and read a book, possibly this one. And if not, then I'll see you on my next video.